Dear dreamer, oh, how I wish I could sit across from you right now. I'd pour you a cup of tea, pull up a cozy chair, and we'd talk like old friends. I know your heart feels heavy with questions, and doubt has crept in like an uninvited guest. You're wondering if your dream matters. You're asking yourself, can I do this? Am I enough? Will it even make a difference? Let me tell you a story about someone who once asked those same questions. Someone who thought her dreams were too small or too far out of reach. That someone was me. The seeds of a dream. When I was a little girl, growing up in a house full of love but short on money, I dreamed of being a writer. I'd sit by the window with a pencil and scraps of paper, scribbling down little stories. Most of the time I'd write about things I saw around me, our chickens pecking in the yard, the way the sunlight danced on the creek, or my sister Carol and I making mud pies in the garden. But as I grew older, life got in the way. My days became filled with chores, school, and helping Mama. There was no time for writing. And even when there was, I'd think, who would want to read anything I write? What could I possibly say that hasn't been said before? Dreamer, have you ever felt that way? Like your dreams are too small to matter? Like you're standing on the edge of something beautiful, but fear and doubt are holding you back? Years later, when I became a wife to Tom and a mother to my children, the dream of writing tugged at my heart again. I'd jot down little notes here and there, recipes, stories about our family, prayers I'd whisper at night. But I kept those words hidden in a drawer, afraid they weren't good enough to share. It wasn't until my first grandchild, Emma, was born that everything changed. A dream rekindled. I remember holding Emma for the first time. She was so tiny with her little fingers wrapped around mine, and I thought, what kind of legacy do I want to leave her? It wasn't money or things. It was wisdom, stories, and love. So I started writing again. Not for the world, but for her. I wrote about my life, how we made ends meet during hard times, the lessons I learned from failure, and the joy of small, ordinary moments. First, I was still unsure. Would she care about these stories? Were they worth telling? But as I poured my heart onto the page, something beautiful happened. Those doubts that had weighed me down for so long started to lift. Dreamer, here's what I learned. When we share our dreams, even if they're small or imperfect, they have a way of touching hearts in ways we can't imagine. When doubt is loud, I won't lie to you, there were moments when doubt screamed louder than my dreams. One of those moments came when I was 47 years old. I had the idea of putting together a little book of stories and recipes, something to pass down to my grandchildren. I told Tom about it one evening as we sat on the porch. "You should do it, Susie," he said, his voice steady and sure. "Oh, Tom," I said, shaking my head. "Who would want to read it? It's just a bunch of old stories." He looked at me with that gentle smile of his and said, "Old stories carry the best lessons. Don't you see? Those old stories are what make us who we are." And so I began. But it wasn't easy. Every time I sat down to write, that little voice of doubt would creep in. No one cares about this. You're wasting your time. But then I remembered something Jesus said. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. To be poor in spirit doesn't mean to lack faith. It means to come to God with your doubts, fears, and imperfections and trust Him to make something beautiful out of them. Lessons from failure. Not every step along the way was smooth. There were times when I thought about quitting. I'd spend hours working on a story or a recipe, only to decide it wasn't good enough. One day I nearly gave up altogether. I had written a story about my sister Carol and me, and when I reread it, all I could see were the flaws. I was ready to tear it up when Maria, my oldest and dearest friend, stopped by for tea. She noticed the crumpled paper on the table and asked, "What's this?" "Just a story I was working on," I said, trying to dismiss it. Maria smoothed out the paper and began to read. When she finished, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Suzie," she said, "this story is beautiful. It reminds me of my own childhood. Don't you see? Your words have a way of bringing people back to what matters most." Her encouragement gave me the strength to keep going. And dreamer, let me tell you this. Even when you feel like giving up, there will always be someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, or even a stranger, who sees the value in what you're doing. Blessed are those who share. Years later, when I finally finished my little book, I hesitated before sharing it. I was so afraid of what people might think. But then I remembered the words of Jesus, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." I realized that sharing my stories wasn't just about me. It was about bringing peace, hope, and love to others. So I took a deep breath, prayed for courage, and put my book into the hands of those I loved most. To my surprise, the stories resonated far beyond my family. Friends, neighbors, and even people I didn't know started telling me how much my words meant to them. They said things like, "This reminded me of my grandmother," or "Your story helped me see my own life in a new way." Dreamer, your dream has the power to touch lives in ways you can't imagine. It might not happen overnight, and it might not look the way you expect, but when you step out in faith, amazing things can happen. A word for you. If you're still doubting your dream, let me leave you with this. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. That hunger, that ache you feel, it's there for a reason. It's God's way of calling you towards something greater. And even if the path feels uncertain, He will walk with you every step of the way. So don't let fear hold you back. Take that first step, even if it's small. Write the first page, sing the first note, plant the first seed. Trust that what you're doing matters, even if you can't see the full picture yet. My prayer for you. As I finish this letter, I'm praying for you, dear dreamer. I pray that you find the courage to start, the strength to persevere, and the faith to trust in God's plan for your life. Remember, you are blessed, not because your dream is perfect or complete, but because you dared to dream in the first place. With love and blessings, Grandma Suzie. Thank you, my dears, for spending this time with me. Remember, life's journey is better when we walk it together. If these stories and reflections warmed your heart, be sure to subscribe and join me for more wisdom, comfort, and a little sprinkle of joy. Together, let's keep growing one story at a time. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, and remember, you're never alone. Grandma loves you.